Despite talk of a roadmap to peace in the Middle East, reality on the ground is roadside shootings, homicide bombings, death, injury, and trauma. Every Israeli family is affected. A recent study at Tel Aviv University showed that 42% of Israeli children suffer from post-trauma syndrome, even if they have not been directly involved in a terrorist attack. For every person killed in these horrible incidents, there are many who suffer injuries. Men, women, and children who are often forgotten by the outside world. The term wounded can mean a permanent disability, like spending the rest of one's life in a wheelchair, the loss of limbs, eyesight, and then there are the emotional scars that linger.
As we came back from a trip in South Africa and we landed in Israel in 1996 in February to hear the news about this bus explosion that took place in Jerusalem, bus number 18, we cried and we were in so much pain. We knew that there's something that maybe we can do to help those that are grieving and those that are suffering. I would say God's hand that directed us into the right place.
Vision for Israel and the Joseph Storehouse were born out of the pain of the terrorism that has overshadowed life in Israel since its establishment. Since then, thousands of Israelis have been traumatized by death and injury. Families have lost breadwinners, children orphaned, others cope with permanent disabilities. Vision for Israel and the Joseph Storehouse established the Terrorist Victims Fund to reach out to those affected by the ravages of terror. The Terrorist Victims Fund helps families with everything from food to finances. Maytal makes the personal contacts with the grieving and injured.
Vision for Israel has been helping terror victims with giving them vouchers to use for the holidays, where they can use that money, go to the grocery store and buy the food that they need to prepare for the holidays.
On October 17, 2000, less than a month into the Palestinian Intifada, 19-year-old border policeman Shimon Ochana arrived on the scene in the Jerusalem neighborhood of Gilo, where a woman resident had been injured by gunfire, directed from the nearby Palestinian town of Beit Jala. As Shimon called for an ambulance to help the woman, he was himself hit by 2 bullets. One pierced his stomach, the second completely lacerated his heart, entering his chest and exiting his back. More than 2 years later at home in Beersheba, Shimon views footage filmed by Fox News of the shooting. He was declared clinically dead, lying on the pavement of Gilo's Anafa Street.
The ambulance I requested for the lady, in the end, came for me. And then the resuscitation emergency procedures were carried out. I was on the ground on that street for about 2 hours. At one point they gave up, put me in a body bag. But as soon as they closed the body bag, it stuck to my mouth. When one noticed that, he said, "Look, he's breathing." So they sent me to Hadassah Hospital.
0.7%. That was the survival chance doctors gave him from such a wound. It was hard to imagine that the kid would survive. He was in a coma for a month. It's a miracle that he survived and is recovering, thank God.
Word of the Gilo shooting spread round the world. Jews and Christians recited psalms and offered prayers on his behalf.
It gave me great joy to know that there are those of another religion who are concerned for the Jews. I thank God.
Shimon came back from the brink of death. Upon his release from hospital, a nurse was heard to remark, "He came here already dead, and now he is alive."
They said it was a medical miracle, that something like that had never happened before.
During his long road to rehabilitation, Rachel Ochana was forced to give up her job. The Ochanas felt the resulting financial pinch. During a follow-up visit to the family in Beersheba by Vision for Israel and the Joseph Storehouse, Batya presents Shimon and the family with a check from the Terrorist Victims Fund.
That we could bring some kind of comfort and relief to those that are mourning in Zion, basically to fulfill the scripture in the Bible, because a lot of them are suffering, and with all the help they get from the government, they still have a lot of expenses due to the circumstances they're in.
Most of these people, especially the ones that were injured, have financial needs. Financial gifts are always very welcomed by those people to help them just go on with life. Some of them, not to mention orphans that have nothing to live from, they would definitely need the resources.
The Joseph Storehouse volunteers prepare aid packages including food, medicines, and children's toys for delivery through the Terrorist Victims Fund for those who mourn in Zion. We took the supplies along with food vouchers to the Moyal home in the Jerusalem neighborhood of Pisgat Ze'ev. Rina Moyal's husband was on his way to work at Jerusalem's Central Post Office early on the morning of May 18th, just like he had every working day for over 30 years. Near the French Hill overpass, a Palestinian suicide bomber exploded himself on the number 6 bus coming from Pisgat Ze'ev. 7 died in the blast, including Rina's husband Yitzhak. They had been together since Rina was 16 years old.
I waited for a call from him, hoping that he had survived, or perhaps had gotten on a later bus, but no call came from him, and I knew it was over. It was only at 9 a.m. that a police officer came to inform us. As soon as I saw him, I said, "You don't have to say anything, I already know." In taking him, they also took my life.
The extended family sits Shiva, 7 days of mourning in the Moyal home. Batya presents Rina with the food vouchers, while other family members receive the needed supplies. Yuval Moyal and his brothers grieve at the loss. It was so unexpected, yet all Israelis live under the shadow of vicious terrorism.
Vision for Israel and the Joseph Storehouse has been cooperating with government officials, and we have been receiving a lot of cooperation with them. They are very happy every time we call and we tell them that we've collected money for the terrorist victim families. They are more than thrilled because they know that it goes a long way.
Governmental and social welfare agencies carry most of the burden of supporting terror victims, but Vision for Israel and the Joseph Storehouse help fill a vital gap, comforting the victims of terror.
It happens, out of nowhere. It's somebody going to school in the morning, going to work, coming home from a wedding party, and it ends very suddenly. And it's just a tremendous tragedy. The pain is so deep.
On a summer weekend in 2001, Sion and Zahava Tzviri's 2 children, Doron and Sharon, along with their son-in-law Yaniv and 2 small grandchildren, were traveling from Jerusalem after the Sabbath. They had taken Sion's car and were expected home in the Tel Aviv area at the end of the weekend.
And then I tried to get them in by the phone, and there is no answering. And a few minutes after this, they have a picture in the TV, and they see my car. And I say to Zahava, "Look, it's my car, it's my children." She say, no. I say, "Yes, it's my car. I know my dashboard." From this day, our life, it's finished. It's also dead. Inside, we are dead.
The Tzviri's 2 grandchildren were left orphaned to be raised by relatives. You have seen some of the stories of those who have been ravaged by terrorism. At Vision for Israel in the Joseph Storehouse, we read in Isaiah chapter 61, verse 3, to console those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. Through the Terrorist Victims Fund, we can help those who mourn in Zion.